What's up, fantasy managers? This episode is a player pause for Thursday night. I'm doing the Seattle Seahawks. I'm doing 6 players from that team, and I'm going to talk about whether I'm going to start or sit these players. This information can help you. I know you're interested, so stick around for 7 seconds. You can do it! Okay, first things first, I want to let you know that this has been recorded on 11/28, a few days before Thursday Night Football, so things might change, but I'm still going to go over this information. And I want to kick things off with the over and under. It's at 46, so points should be scored, but not from the away team. Seattle Seahawks are 18th in scoring, averaging 20.8 points per game, and 21st in total offense, earning 317 yards per game. The Dallas Cowboys are 4th in defensive scoring at 16.8 points per game, and 3rd in total defense, allowing 276 yards per game. Heading into Week 13, Pro Football Network has Seattle Seahawks offensive line ranked 29th, with struggles with the interior. Seattle is 19th in sacks allowed, giving up 2.5 sacks a game. The Cowboys are tied for 3rd in sacks by getting to the quarterback 3.4 times a game, and 3rd in giving up 4.7 yards per play. All right, for the injuries, there's 2 players I want to talk about that have an impact on the offensive side of the game. Kenneth Walker, the third, he did not practice with an oblique injury. And guard Phil Haynes did not practice with a toe injury. Okay, now on to the player pause players. Number 1, Geno Smith. Smith is 0-5 on Thursday Night Football. He is averaging 197 passing yards and 0.6 touchdowns and 1 interception in Thursday night games. He is quarterback 19, facing a defense that allows 14 points to quarterbacks. The Cowboys have allowed 14 passing touchdowns this season, and that's like in the middle of the league. And allowing 2 rushing touchdowns from quarterbacks, which is about mid to bottom out of the 32 teams. And the Cowboys are 2nd in the league, only giving up 167 passing yards a game and have 12 interceptions, which is top 10. The Cowboys at home are a different breed. Their point differential is insane. Only 1 quarterback has thrown for 300 yards. That was Sam Howell, who also scored the most fantasy points against the Cowboys at Dallas. But he didn't throw a touchdown, and he did throw an interception. Sam Howell's day was saved by a rushing touchdown. Needless to say, Howell leads the league in passing yards, and Geno is 15th in passing. Players like Baker Mayfield and Jordan Love have more passing yards than Geno. His average completed air yards is 5.8, with an intended air yards average of 8. Both are considered like good stats, with the league average at 65 completion percentage. His 32 attempts per game is the middle of the pack, and his 12 touchdowns is 19th in the league. This guy is a very average quarterback this season, not what fantasy managers drafted him for, and his stats will likely get worse throughout the season. In the last 5 games, he has 5 touchdowns and 5 turnovers. In those last 5 games, he has scored over 15 points once, and that was against Washington, the worst defense in the NFL. Last week against the 49ers, he struggled with pressure from the defensive line. Now he faces a Dallas Cowboys defensive line who will be in Geno's grill all game long. But Geno Smith will get you some points. He averages 3.7 deep attempts a game, and his deep ball completion is 45%, which is 10th in the league. But his speciality of being 3rd in play action completion percentage won't matter because Seattle will not have a run game. I pause. Geno Smith. And next, I want to go into the running backs. The first one I want to talk about is Kenneth Walker. Yes, he's injured. Yes, he may not play, but in case he does play, I want this information out there. He has 1 game played on Thursday night. His stat line was 12 for 43 and 4 receptions for 32 yards on 5 targets. No touchdowns. Walker is running back 20 versus a defense that allows 17 points to running backs. The Cowboys have given up 5 rushing touchdowns this season. That is 21st in the league. And they're 13th, only allowing 109 rushing yards a game. There has been no running back this season to rush over 100 yards against the Dallas Cowboys. It's worse for running backs to play in Dallas, as the Cowboys improved their opponent rushing total to 85 yards a game. There has been 1 running back to score over 15 points against the Cowboys, and that was James Conner in Week 3. Now Kenneth Walker sees 8+ men in the box 23% of the time, and that is in the top 15 most. And that could be the reason why his stuff rate is 20%, which is 5th in the league. So, which means 20% of the time he's stuffed in the backfield. His rushing yards over expected is -30, and he is -0.21 in rushing yards over expected per attempt. But yet he's 5th in juke rate, and he has 6 rushing touchdowns, and 5 of those touchdowns have come inside the 5-yard line. He couldn't convert those opportunities back in 2022, but back then, at least he was scoring touchdowns from 50 yards out. Now he is capable of scoring at the goal line, but I believe he only has 1 touchdown of 50-plus yards. And speaking of those 6 rushing touchdowns, He hasn't scored a rushing touchdown since week 6. In week 8, 9, or 10, before the injury, Charbonnet had a higher percentage snaps played than Walker, which is terrifying. He did have a long yards after catch touchdown in week 10 against Washington, but he averages 1 reception a game. There's no opportunity there. Because of his big play potential, he will be in managers' lineups. So he'll need some goal line carries, but the chances he gets you RB1 or RB2 numbers are slim. I pause. Kenneth Walker. Okay, and the second running back, Zach Charbonnet. He's the backup running back, but he's likely going to get the start if Kenneth Walker does not play. He is running back 54 versus a defense that allows 17 points to running backs. The Cowboys have given up 5 rushing touchdowns this season. That's 21 in the league. And they're 13th, only allowing 109 rushing yards a game. There's been no running back to rush over 100 yards against the Dallas Cowboys. And it's worse for running backs to play in Dallas as the Cowboys improve their opponent's rushing total to 85 yards a game. There's only one running back to score over 15 points against the Cowboys, and that was James Conner in week 3. In the last 2 games when Walker got injured and then missed last week, Charbonnet had above 85% snaps played. So he's the guy if Walker misses. And what did he do in those 2 games? Not much. He recorded 47 yards in both the games. Last week, he saw 8+ men in the box only 7% of the time, which is a running back's dream, but the 49ers held Charbonnet to a minus 22 rushing yards over expected and a minus 1.6 yards over expected per attempt. You don't expect to see those numbers when basically 1 out of his 14 rushes have more than 8 men in the box. He can earn some points with his receiving, but I believe we'll see the same outcome as last week against the 49ers. If Walker plays, I pause Charbonnet. If Walker is out, I still pause Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet. All right, now let's get to the wide receiver core. Let's start this thing off with DK Metcalf, wide receiver 34 versus a defense that allows 26 points to wide receivers. Cowboys have given up 7 touchdowns in 12 games. That is top 5 in the league. They've only allowed 107 receptions to wide receivers this season. That's top 3. DK Metcalf leads the Seahawks wide receivers in yards per route run versus man at 1.97 and zone 2.08, as well as fantasy points per route run against both. The Cowboys play man coverage second most. His separation is 2.5, which is considered good and average, but his intended air yards is 14.6, which is tied with Mike Evans for 6th highest. He leads Seattle in 80 targets this year, so fantasy managers must be thinking, like, what's the deal with him? Well, his catch rate is 53%, but his true catch rate, according to Player Profiler, is 97%, which means over 40% of his targets are uncatchable. And I know this must bother fantasy managers of DK Metcalf because he also leads his team in red zone targets with 20, but only has 6 receptions. So now heading into the game, DK Metcalf's target percentage against man coverage is 31%. That's 6th in the league. Like I said before, Dallas plays man coverage second most in the NFL. This is why he is my gamble of the week. He had 3 catches on 9 targets last week against the 49ers, who play a league average of man and zone coverage. In week 11, 9 targets. In week 10, 12 targets. Overall, his targets are there. I believe Metcalf will be able to establish more separation with his big body against the Cowboys cornerbacks. And I'm going to roll the dice that Geno Smith can actually throw him some catchable balls. Or he'll have the same production as he did last week. I play DK Metcalf. Okay, and wide receiver 2 for the Seattle Seahawks, Tyler Lockett, Mr. Old Reliable. He's wide receiver 30 versus a defense that allows 26 points to wide receivers. Cowboys given up 7 touchdowns in 12 games. That's top 5 in the league. They've only allowed 107 receptions to wide receivers this season. That's top 3. Lockett is only behind Metcalf in targets with 79. But Lockett has a better separation average at 2.8. And maybe that's why he has more receptions than Metcalf. But he's also behind DK Metcalf on red zone targets, which could be the reason why he only has 4 touchdowns this year. There is no middle ground for Lockett. He's either at 15 points or 5 points. He's very inconsistent. Lockett lines up on the right side 47% of the time. Cowboys cornerback Deron Bland covers the right side 79% of the time and allows a terrible 0.24 fantasy points per route run for wide receivers. Do you think Geno Smith, who has 5 turnovers in the last 5 games, wants to throw into the direction for the record holder for most pick sixes in a season? Enough said. I pause. Tyler Lockett. Now let's finish this with the big brothers, Seattle Seahawks tight ends Noah Fant and Will Dissly. Noah Fant is tight end 31. Will Dissly is tight end 60 versus a defense who allows 11 points to tight ends. If there's a weak spot in the Dallas secondary, it could be the tight end position. Dallas has allowed 6 touchdowns to tight ends, which is tied for most in the league. My concerns is both tight ends combined for 29 receptions on 37 targets. Neither have a touchdown and a combined average of 2 points a game and only 2 red zone targets total. If there were any other tight ends more involved in a passing game, I would press play, but I'm not going to risk it. I pause. Seattle tight ends. And I would like to finish this with my final thoughts for the Seattle Seahawks on Thursday night. Geno Smith, what I saw last week scares me. He couldn't produce anything at home against the 49ers. Now he's going to Dallas to play a similar Cowboys defense. Geno Smith is starting to look like the New York Jets Geno Smith. Kenneth Walker, he is dealing with an oblique injury, but this defense is tough against the run, and Walker has not hit his explosive plays like in 2022. There's a good chance he will get outsnapped by Zach Charbonnet. And speaking of the devil, Zach Charbonnet had his moment to shine last week, playing 88% of the snaps. But even with 8 men in the box, only 7% of the time, he couldn't produce good fantasy points. We will see the same thing in Dallas. And my gamble of the week, wide receiver DK Metcalf. Metcalf and Smith will eventually have a good connection. It's bizarre his catch rate for the season is 53%. I'm gambling he can make it easier for Geno and gain some separation with his strength against the Cowboys cornerbacks. Tyler Lockett, he has been inconsistent all year. Now he plays a tough matchup against a cornerback, but only allows 0.24 fantasy points per route run. And lastly, the Seahawks tight ends. Well, I can't remember the last time I saw a Seahawks tight end catch a ball, and I know I haven't seen them catch a touchdown. This is an easy call. All right, we did it. We made it to the end. Thank you for watching this video. I do believe the information I provided in this video can help you decide who to start or who to play for your players in this Thursday night game for the Seattle Seahawks. Tyler has his player pause video for the Dallas Cowboys coming out tomorrow. Make sure to catch that. If you haven't already, if you guys could please sub or press a like, it goes a long way. We appreciate all you guys. We like doing this for you and the interaction that we have. We got some videos coming out later this week. I will talk to you then. Deuces.